Whenever you ask school people what are the most pressing issues in K-12 education today, that's the answer that you get: achievement gaps. They're very concerned that there are differences between the achievement of particular groups, especially children who come from poverty versus children who come from more advantaged backgrounds. At Purdue, we have a number of projects that are focused on this issue because we think it's very important too. For example, our science learning project is going into high poverty schools and working with the parents and the teachers to help the children, young children who come from poverty, to really understand what science is all about. Standardized testing is the gold standard for how we assess achievement in this country. And the advantage of standardized testing is that it allows you to compare students no matter where they are, and no matter what kind of schools they're in, and no matter who they are. You get a similar metric or a similar measuring stick. However, standardized testing works better for some subjects than for others. For example, it works pretty well for mathematics, because mathematics is a well-structured discipline. You either know how to multiply or you don't. You either know how to divide or you don't. You can work fraction problems or you can't. But there are other areas that are much more difficult to measure with standardized tests. For example, in the area of science, you can measure content knowledge with a standardized test, but you really can't measure whether a student is able to find an interesting problem and conduct the proper experiment to test his or her hypotheses about that problem. So standardized tests have pretty serious limitations for assessing some of the higher order things that are really important for students of the 21st century to learn. We have children who are diverse on a number of dimensions. They're diverse with respect to their economic background, and indeed we're finding that poverty is one of the big divides in education. They're also diverse with respect to their cultural backgrounds. We have many international students in our schools. We have many Latino and Hispanic students who do not often speak English as their first language. And we have different environments in our schools. So we have urban schools, suburban schools, and rural schools, and they are all different with respect to the kinds of cultures they have for learning and education. At Purdue University, a major theme of our teacher education programs is preparing teachers to work with diverse learners. This act has certainly had a tremendous impact on the nation's schools, and I would say that the results are somewhat mixed. The positive side of No Child Left Behind is that it has really encouraged a national focus on struggling learners. Sometimes those learners were ignored in the past, or they weren't appropriately educated. Because No Child Left Behind builds in serious consequences for schools that do not bring all students up to a minimum level of competency in key areas like reading and mathematics, it has really focused the attention of schools on students like English language learners who have great difficulty, not because they can't do the subjects, but because they don't know the language. And there's been a big increase in the attention paid to such learners in schools because of No Child Left Behind. I think No Child Left Behind has also created a positive atmosphere of accountability, that schools are responsible not just for what they're doing, but for the outcomes of what they're doing, for what their students learn. However, No Child Left Behind has had unintended consequences too, which is what often happens when you provide a kind of one-size-fits-all solution to problems that are really very complex. And some of those unintended consequences are not quite as positive. For example, there has been a decrease in the amount of time and attention that schools are able to provide to things like teaching students to be creative or to work in groups and in teams, which are very important outcomes as far as business and industry is concerned, but which take more time than drilling students on basic material. At Purdue University, we have a new project. We're working in partnership with the Woodrow Wilson Fellowship Foundation to provide fellowships to highly qualified individuals in STEM who have graduated in the STEM disciplines or are interested in career changing. We're going to bring those individuals to Purdue University, and we're going to train them to teach in rural high schools in the STEM disciplines. That's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We believe through this project that we can help the rural schools of America to begin really exciting students about STEM education